Scuf may have just released the best controller on the market right now, but there's a catch. Today we're going to be unboxing and looking at the Scuf Envision Pro controller. Scuf released their Envision line just a couple of months ago, so they're still pretty new, and I finally got my hands on the Pro version. So a disclaimer, I'm pretty new on controller. I've been using the much cheaper PowerA controller recently, which does have two paddles on the back, but I've been suffering quite badly with stick drift. I was due an upgrade, and I'm super excited to see how the Envision Pro can help me elevate my game going into Call of Duty Ranked. So without further ado, let's see what's in the box. As soon as we open the Scuf box, we're met with this notification telling us to download the iCUE software. Now, for those of you that don't know, Scuf is owned by Corsair, and iCUE is Corsair's software. You will need to have iCUE running to set up the controller in the first case, and also to change the bindings on your profile. So let's talk about some of the key features on this controller. First up, one of the most satisfying parts about this controller, most of the buttons feature these lovely mechanical mouse-like switches. As default, the controller features two short concave thumbsticks. You will likely notice the 5 G buttons on the front here. These are all programmable, and you'll be able to see some of the default options here, such as controlling your volume or muting your microphone. The controller does also feature a 3.5mm jack, although I think these are getting more obsolete these days. Moving on to the rear of the controller, we have 4 paddles, 2 inner and 2 outer. You'll probably notice that the outer paddles are fixed in and cannot be removed, whereas the inner paddles can be removed and capped off. It's also worth noting that the outer ones have a much less satisfying click to them. Moving on to the triggers, and probably the best selling point of the whole controller. As default, you'll see we have triggers that have full range of motion, so they're perfect for games like racing games. However, just a slide across to this dial here will turn them into instant feedback triggers. This is easy to switch across, as shown, and then we have a really short travel distance mouse-like click. Additionally, the controller can be plugged in through this USB-C port here, or you can use Corsair's Slipstream wireless technology. Again, the Slipstream technology was a big selling point for me because I much prefer wireless peripherals. You would have probably noticed that the controller also features these rubberized grips here, as well as 2 very unique buttons on the side here called sax buttons. These are a pretty unique addition to the controller, and I've seen very varying opinions on them. I can see them being useful for something like pinging on Warzone, but you don't want to use something that could be too costly if you accidentally press it. Now, we're just setting the controller aside to see what else is in the box. Here is the wireless dongle to connect the controller to the computer using Slipstream technology. If we lift up the plastic in the box, we should find more things at the bottom. So first off, we're going to find some caps here which used to cap off both the inner paddles and those sax buttons on the side of the controller. So you do have the option to use them, or if they don't work for you, you can cap them off. Next up, we have further accessories inside. So I mentioned the controller features 2 short concave thumbsticks. Luckily, you do also get a long domed and a short domed thumbstick in the box with your controller. I'm personally excited to try out the long domed thumbstick on my right thumbstick, so it should make it easier to aim. If you do choose to wire your controller instead, you do have this long braided cable. I'm not sure on the exact length of the cable, but it feels like it's around about 2 meters. Finally, we have this little tool here which is used to pry off the faceplate to change those thumbsticks. However, it should be fairly easy just to get your nail under there and pop it up. Now, to change those thumbsticks, you just have to simply pull with a little bit of force and they should pop right off. And to simply replace, you just put a little bit of pressure down and make sure they're lined up properly. And the faceplate slots right back on. Now for the most satisfying part of the video. I'm super excited to try out this controller. Going from the Xbox controller is going to be a bit of a change, but hopefully it won't take too long to get used to. Right, I'm going to go set up the controller now and see what this is all about. I'm going to be running some tests on the latency of the controller to see what it's like out of the box. If I find that the latency is particularly bad, I can always try to overclock the controller. This is something I may look to do in the future, although I had heard of some issues with overclocking on the Envision Pro, so it's something that will be quite interesting to see if it works. Now, at the start of the video, I did say there was a catch. Now, there's no doubt that the Envision Pro is a great controller with some amazing out-of-the-box features, but it is PC only. So if, unlike me, you own a console, this probably won't be the controller for you. And as of now, I'm not sure of any way to use the controller on a console. So I'm going to go ahead and use the controller for a couple of months now, see what I think about it. Hopefully it continues to impress, and I'll check back in with you guys after that. Okay guys, it's been about 2 or 3 months since I filmed the first part of this video. I think now I have a pretty good understanding of the Envision Pro controller. I've mainly used the controller on Call of Duty, but I've also tried it on games like FIFA, so I've used the trigger in both of those states, which, to remind you, is the instant feedback, and if you slide it across, you've got the full range of motion. So first off, I'm going to show you how I configured my controller. So as we can see, I've removed the inner paddles here because I felt like I kept knocking them. I wasn't really used to having paddles on the back, and having 4 was just a bit much. I wouldn't say this is really a fault with the controller, it's more of a fault of my lack of experience with these paddles on the back. However, now that I'm more used to having them, I kind of want to try the inner paddles again so I can bind my reload and my switch weapon buttons. That way I don't have to move my thumb off the thumbstick at all. I opted to keep the sax buttons on. I only really use the right one, that's for my push to talk button. That way it's not too detrimental if I accidentally press it, although I haven't actually noticed any accidental presses being an issue at all. And then finally, I've got my thumbsticks. I've got the short domed. I did try the long domed on the right stick, but it just wasn't for me. So yeah, I've got short domed on the right and then the short concave on the left. As you would have seen in the previous clip, I did some testing on the latency of the controller, and it averaged out about a 1.6 or 1.7 ms, which is really impressive for out of the box latency. Because of this, I haven't really tried overclocking the controller at all, so I can't really give you any feedback on that. As I said before, I did see some people having issues with overclocking, but I don't really think it's actually that necessary on this controller. In terms of the IQ software, again, I'd seen some pretty negative things about this, but for me, I've had very minimal issues. There's been some occurrences here or there where the bindings on the controller have been messed up, which is obviously pretty frustrating if you're mid-game, but I've remedied it by just switching to wired. So I'll simply plug the wire in and then on the back, switch it to the wired mode. Because of this, I've ended up using the controller in the wired and the wireless modes a fair amount, and I've not had any issues with the wired mode at all. The cable's plenty long enough. And obviously if your battery dies while you're playing, you have to plug it in anyway. On the topic of battery, I've not had any issues with battery life whatsoever. The only thing being is when I turn my computer off, I sometimes forget to turn the controller off, and the auto shut off doesn't seem to work when the controller's off. So we'll kind of just sit there flashing red until it dies, I guess. I'm assuming the auto shut off feature is a software reliant thing and it's not actually using its onboard memory. That's more so a fault of me rather than the software or the controller. So overall, all of the things that I was looking forward to on this controller have absolutely delivered, and some of my reservations haven't really caused an issue whatsoever. Overall, if you play the PC and you're looking for a new controller, and you're willing to spend the money, this is absolutely the controller I would recommend. Again, I've not got huge experience with controllers, but when comparing this to other ones on the market, I think it's a fairly good price and the features are pretty amazing. Anyways guys, I really hope this was helpful for you. Let me know if you do decide to get the controller or if you choose a different one because of this review. If you enjoyed, please like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll catch you guys in my next video.